I recently saw that you did a video about your 3-a-day training sets. Looks really cool. Thanks for doing that, by the way.
Yeah.
But would you tell us your personal sets, reps, and weights? Not necessarily to go into detail, but just kind of how you judge them, why you judge them to be that way, how you schedule them in your week, and I mean, guess what you would advocate for somebody who's a bodybuilder, what they should do.
Yeah, right. Okay. Just so we have a little context, when I was training in the 80s, which was right around the time that Arnold Schwarzenegger and Frank Zane and all those guys were, still training at Gold's Gym and still competing, the conventional wisdom was a three-way split. 1/3 the body on Monday, 1/3 on Tuesday, 1/3 on Wednesday, repeat Thursday, Friday, Saturday, off on Saturday. That was pretty much what everybody was doing. The thing that was different back then was that everyone thought you had to do multiple exercises for each muscle. So I can't imagine how we did it actually, because the idea of doing 1/3 of your body and doing 15 sets for each of those muscles, we must have spent 5 hours in the gym. So shortly after that, the trend became a 4-way split, and then it became a 5-way split, which of course was justified by the belief that more sets and more weight was necessary for optimum gains. And if you're going to do that many sets per workout, then you can't do too many body parts in one workout in one day. So you have to stretch it out farther. And that automatically requires less frequency of a muscle getting worked. So that's what the trend was. Now, we might look at the guys that are taking heavy steroids and they're working on a body part once a week. And we might think, well, that obviously works. I'm going to do that. Maybe it only works for them because they're taking all the steroids. I don't know. All I know is that I gravitated toward that, and I did not get great results. But the problem that I had, and the problem that probably anybody who's older would have, is making the incorrect assumption that the reason why you're not getting good gains is because you're older, right? You're not getting good gains because you don't have the ideal workout, or at least the ideal frequency. You might have ideal exercise, but if you're not using the ideal frequency, then you're going to get a compromised benefit. If you're young, like 20 or 30 years old, you might not have the excuse of saying, I'm older, and so I better change something. But when you're older, you start thinking, well, maybe it's just, what happens when you're older. So I competed in 2019 at the age of 59, and I won the drug-free universe, but I was not entirely pleased with how I looked. I thought that I was a little bit too small. But I trained that way for a little bit afterwards. And then I thought, you know what, I'm just going to switch it up, because I guess maybe I need to stop worrying about muscle size and worry more about health. So I thought I would just do a 3-way split, a full body workout, full body Monday, full body Wednesday, full body Friday. And this do cardio on Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. And if I lose muscle, so what? My heart will thank me for it, I said. So I went from doing 12 sets a muscle group to 2 sets per muscle group, but all the muscle groups in one day. That's about an hour and a half workout. It's about 20 exercises. So it's about 40, a little over 40 sets. And I started to grow, which was pretty shocking to me because it was only 2 sets. But because it was only 2 sets, I also sort of felt like I'd like to do more than 2 sets, although I don't want to go back to where I was. What if I just do 4 sets, 3 or 4, but let's just say 4 sets, and putting all the muscle groups in one day, I divided it into 3 days. So that's what I've been doing. And I've been getting like insanely good results. I'll tell you what the moral of the story is here in just a second. So I do 6 exercises on day 1, which is 6 different muscles. 6 exercises on day 2, another 6 muscles. 8 exercises on day 3, another 8 muscles. So 1 exercise per muscle, 4 sets for each. And before I move into how many reps, I'll tell you a little context. they did a study that suggested anyway, that you could get equal amount of muscle growth using high reps versus low reps. High reps, lighter weight, low reps, heavier weight. And specifically, the range was 30 reps to 6 reps, 30 reps with a weight equivalent to 40% of your 1 rep max, 6 reps with a weight equivalent to 80% of your 1 rep max. The growth, although it was equal, was by way of a different mechanism, which means that you had to take the lighter sets to failure, but you did not take the heavier sets to failure. The first, second, third rep of a 6 rep set are all productive because the weight is heavy. And so you get high fiber recruitment. Over here, you don't get high fiber recruitment until the muscle is thoroughly exhausted. So now I knew about that study 2 or 3 years ago. And that's a misleading study, because what I thought was, well, if you get equal growth with both types of sets, with which type of those 2 sets can you do more sets? Well, I can do a lot more sets of low rep sets than I can high rep, because you do high rep, you burn out. And so that made me think, I call it greedy, but it's not unusual for a person to say, okay, well, if this is good, how can I get better? How can I get more? Right. So, if 2 sets of high reps to failure is good and 2 reps of low reps heavy is good, then how about if I do 8 sets or 10 sets or 12 sets of heavy, right? So the problem with that thinking is that you end up having to do less frequency, and that screws the whole thing up. So what I've learned is that frequency is key. That frequency is something that you almost have to lay down first and then lay everything down around it, right? So Chris Beardsley, who's a researcher, asked a very good question, a theoretical question, which of course he was intent on answering. And that was, in order to determine the ideal frequency of a workout, what does a muscle have to recover from before it's ready for another workout? And he identified 3 factors. One of those 3 factors recovers within hours of the workout. Another one recovers after about 12 to 15 hours. Another one recovers after about 30 to 40 hours. So 48 hours every other day, he surmised, would be the ideal frequency. Now, the part that's left out of that equation, which I think, can't be left out of the equation because it's really important, is how many sets did you do? What kind of intensity did you do that A, allowed you to recover in only 2 days? And B, what if you do more? What's the negative? What if you do less? Should you work at every muscle every day? And all these things. So the other thing that you have to say is, what if I don't work a muscle every other day? What's the consequence? Well, we know what working a muscle once a week does. That's clearly not good. I can tell you firsthand. But where in between every other day and once every 7 days is the good and the bad, right? So let's start off with saying, what happens if you do once every 3rd day, twice a week, Monday and Thursday, let's say. If you did actually lose a little something because you waited an extra day, the question is, how much did you lose? The other question is, how much did you gain in terms of sustainability? So if you can figure out, ascertain, determine conclusively that it is better to work a muscle every other day, what happens if you can't sustain that? What if I do that and after a month I'm burnt out, right? Didn't do you any good that you got good gains, because now you got to stop for a week or 2, whatever. So let's just take a hypothetical. When we work out, we start at the baseline, and then the strength of that muscle, the thickness of that muscle dips down, and then it starts to rise back up again, and it crosses that baseline and starts this thing called the supercompensation phase. It rises in size and strength, and then it reaches a peak, and then it starts to come back down again. That's why if you wait too long, it's like you're starting from square one all over again. Seems to me that process is about a week to 10 days. If you wait a week to 10 days to work that muscle again, you're pretty much starting over again every time. Certainly if you wait every 2 weeks, then it's a disaster. The question is, how soon does that thing drop off? If a person were to theoretically think that it's good to work a muscle every other day, but bad to work it every third day, you would have to believe that that peak just drops off a cliff. I don't think anything drops off a cliff ever, right? So that's just not the way the body works. It must go up, and it must either start a slow decline or hover there for a day before it starts to decline. So I right away embrace this idea of twice a week, because there's no doubt that you can sustain that better. So unless I was disappointed with the kind of muscle gains I was getting, then I was going to stay with this twice a week thing. Now, 4 sets is the number of sets that the most number of sets that you can actually do with high intensity and still be able to do every twice a week. If you use more intensity than that, it's going to force you to take longer rest time. So you can't justify doing more sets, quote unquote, stimulating that muscle more, if it requires less frequency, because frequency happens to be pretty much the most important thing. So you need to select the frequency that allows you to do twice a week. Bottom line. If that's 2 sets for you, it's 2 sets. If it's 3 sets, it's 3 sets. For me, it's 4. Now, you might say, I can do 5, I can do 6. I would say, let me see those 5 or 6 sets. Let's see what they look like.
Exactly.
Right? If you're doing 5 or 6 sets, the way I'm doing my 4 sets, more power to you, but I doubt it. Right? So what happens more often than not is people fall into this little trap of thinking more sets is better, and don't realize that what they've done is they've compromised the intensity of each of those sets so that they can survive 5 or 6 sets. That's not a good strategy. It's really not a good strategy. You're better off with fewer sets.
I was gonna say, it's what everyone seems to do is they go to the gym, they got whatever plan that they're on, this kind of half-baked thing that they're on. So it's 3 sets of 10. And they're like, well, this is going to be hard, so I need to conserve my energy to make sure I get all of those. And you can't do the intensity and time, they're inversely related. You can't be super intense, and you can't also have that for a long time. It's one or the other. You burn the glucose out, you break the fibers. What are you going to do next? Yeah.
The other thing that you have to ask yourself is, we know that intensity, fatigue, proximity to failure, drastically boost muscle growth. They have to be there. The less they're there, the less muscle growth you'll get. Question is, how much is too much? Right? So humans have a tendency, especially competitive humans, have a tendency to think that more is always better. So you might think that, okay, fine, I'm going to do Doug's 4 set routine, but I'm going to just blitz these. I'm going to do breakdown sets, and well, again, if you can't recover from that with 3 days, then it's not going to work for you. So that means that we need to think of exercise, or a set of exercise, as a dose, like a pill. Like you take this pill, but it has to have the right dose. It can be too much. It can be too little, but it can be too much. Right? So intensity is good, but crazy intensity is not especially good and not necessary. So what I typically do is on my first of 4 sets, and by the way, I use, lighter weight, higher reps, moving toward lower reps, higher weight. So 30, 20, 15, 10 ballpark. And of course you start with a lighter weight, and you add and you add and you add and you add. So for my first set, I usually use about 85% of maximum effort. That translates to about 3 reps left in reserve before you put the weight down. So let's just say you're planning on doing a 30 rep set. By the time you get to your 30th rep, you can guess that maybe you could have done 33 reps, maybe 34 reps with a lot of difficulty and pain. That's the right intensity. Now, what I just described will start to burn at around 20. 21, 22, 23. So what you have to do is you have to pay attention to what that muscle is saying to you. So let's just say that you pick up a weight, you think it's the right weight for 30 reps. You get to 30 reps, but you realize that you don't only have 3 reps left in reserve. You have at least 10, maybe 15 reps in reserve. Should you put the weight down just because the paper says 30 reps? Of course not. Take it to 40, take it to 41, take it to 42, take it to whatever you think will leave you with around 3 reps in reserve. That's the first set. You increase weight, another guesstimate, right? You're guessing that this weight will be the right weight to challenge you for 20 reps. If you're wrong and you fail at 17, no problem. But if you can do 25, 26, do 25, 26. The next set, your goal is 15. You pick the weight you think is going to be the right weight for that. If you end up getting 16 or 18 with it or 20 again, fine, no problem. Add weight, next set. If you can get 12 reps with it, 13 reps. So I always tell people, you have a plan, but be ready to depart from the plan. Your plan is 10 reps. When you get to 10, your muscle is talking to you. Can I do an 11th rep? Yes. I don't know about 12, but for the moment, I know I can do an 11th. Only after the 11th will you know if you can squeeze out a 12th. And only after the 12th will you know if you can squeeze out a 13th, because the situation is changing. It's fluid. It's changing as you go. And so that's when you have to start paying attention. You can't be robotic about this. And so I find that it's better to not even have music on. Pay attention. Think about what the muscle is feeling. Right now, there's going to be a time, all of us get to this point where we say, okay, I just did a set. Let's say I did my 4th set and I did decline dumbbell press and I used 45 pounds and I got 12 reps with it. And you think, would it have been better if I'd used the 50-pound weight for 10 reps or 9 reps? Would it have been better? No. Would it have been as good? Maybe as good, but not better. So don't fret that you did 12 reps with a 45-pound dumbbell and that you blew it. You should have. There is no definitive advantage to using a heavier weight in terms of muscle growth. The muscle is not going to grow according to the 5 more pounds. It's going to go according to what it felt, what it experienced. If it felt intensity, you're at 12 reps, 13 reps, you're failing at 12 and 13, you're already under 30 reps. So you're already qualifying for an amount of weight that is adequate for growth. Now just milk it, right? You're going to get the same growth with the 12 than you would have with the 16, than you would have with the 9 with a heavier weight. So now the differentiating factor is, can I use the best control, the best form, the best safety? If I use the 50, will it start to strain the joint a little bit? Is that worth it, even though I didn't have any muscle gain advantage from it? No, absolutely, it's not worth it. So this is the conversation you have to have with yourself when you're moving through the workout. And 4 sets of this kind of intensity will really make you sweat. I mean, it is so intense that you will probably dread the next set. You're like, oh God, here he goes. So you have to psych up, right? So, and then you go to the next body part and you do the next 4, and the next body part, you do the next 4. By the time you're done with your 6 muscle groups, if you've done it right and you're not quite acclimated to it yet, don't be surprised if you're a little bit hypoglycemic, if you're a little bit nauseous, if you're really, really wiped out, right? Go home and freshen up, drink some water, maybe, have a protein drink, maybe a banana, and recover. Eventually, you'll feel less and less hypoglycemic, but that is what it takes. You can't walk away from a workout like this without having sweated if you're doing it right. And then that combination twice a week, I feel like it's just the winning formula. The right exercise, the right intensity, the right frequency, bingo.